You know, one of the things I miss about the 80s and the 90s and even the 2000s was on a Friday night or a Saturday night when I had the time, walking around a video store just kind of looking for a movie to watch. Oftentimes, what brought us in were just the box art, maybe who was starring in the movie, the brief synopsis in the back, and whether or not the video clerk, or in many instances in my young life, the librarian would give us a good recommendation based upon what was there. Movies are very much a water cooler sport, but oftentimes many of them go overlooked for a multitude of reasons. I'm sure you're probably going to see a lot of the ones I'm going to talk about, and there's going to be ones that maybe you have to recommend that I haven't seen, films you feel are overlooked, and that's kind of what brings me to this general idea of what I'm calling the overlooked hotel. Yeah, it's a bit of a pun. I'll fully admit, okay, it's not the most original pun out there, but it works. I want to create a place. I want to create a home, if you will, for talking about movies that many of us view as being overlooked, not overrated or underrated or you know, celebrated, but really the rough and tumble films, the kind of films we maybe have seen on cable, the movies we maybe have seen the box art for when we were kind of either walking through the video store aisles or even just, you know, endlessly scrolling on Netflix. But movies we recognize. And I thought, what better way to kick off this new series on the channel than to talk about one of my favorite movies as a kid and the fact that I snapped this up without even looking at it, Judgment Night. Now, you might notice when looking at the box art here, it's in German. It's a PAL DVD. That was my bad. I was actually at Half Price Books on Memorial Day, and I'm looking around, and all of a sudden I see Judgment Night staring me in the face. And I watched this movie a bunch as a kid. So I immediately grabbed it, threw it in my pile, and it wasn't until I got home that I realized, oh snap, it's in the Deutsch. And I sprechen Sie Deutsch? No, I do not. Sprechen Sie English? That is what I do. But I can't. So I can't watch it. But I own it, and I thought, do I return it? And the answer to that is no. My philosophy at this particular weird point in my life is that I want to give movies a good home. I want to give movies, even movies that are, in my opinion, overlooked in some ways, or just movies I like. I want to give physical media a good home. And I thought, you know what? This movie is awesome, be it in German, be it in English. So yeah. So if you don't know what Judgment Night is, it's a 1993 action. I don't even call it an action movie. It's a thriller about a couple of guys who go off to go see a pay-per-view event down at the Coliseum. It's a boxing match. It's Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Stephen Dorff, and they're all kind of average, salt-of-the-earth, kind of working-class Joe kind of guys. But their buddy, played by Jeremy Piven, he's the smooth talker. And if you've ever seen Entourage, you know what I'm talking about. Or a personal overlooked classic, in my opinion, PCU, which I will talk about in a future episode. And it's one of those movies where it's like, the idea is interesting. A bunch of guys are going to a game, or to a boxing match, get stuck in traffic, decide to take the city streets through a bad part of town in a luxury motorhome, RV, Winnebago type thing, end up witnessing a murder, and then have to basically survive the night while being hunted by the criminal overlord of that part of the city. In this particular case, that particular overlord is played by none other than Denis freaking Leary. Here's the thing. Make no mistake. That particular casting is one that is kind of wild in my opinion, because Denis Leary is not the kind of guy that you would really assume would take on a role like this. I mean, it's Denis Leary. I think the next year, this was 93, 94, or was it 95? He was in The Ref with Kevin Spacey and Annette Bening, and he was kind of like the antagonist of the movie to an extent. You know, you could call him maybe an anti-hero. Like, The Ref is a really funny, really good Christmas movie that's super crazy. But this one, it's like he's playing the bad guy, you know what I mean? And that's kind of odd. So this movie itself was directed by Stephen Hopkins, who's known for Predator 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, was it Blown Away, with the one with Tommy Lee Jones and Jeff Bridges, not the one with Corey Feldman, Corey Haim, and Nicole Eggert, which is also in many ways kind of an overlooked movie. And then he also did Lost in Space from 1998. He hasn't really been that active since 2016 when he did a movie called Race, which is about Jesse Owens from 1936 Olympics. So that might be worth checking out. But he also did The Ghost in the Darkness, which is a good movie. And then he did The Reaping, which is that weird one with Anna Sophia Robb, which came out back in 2007. So this guy is like, you know, he also was, by the way, just, I don't know why I'm pointing this out. According to his Wikipedia, he was a second unit director on Highlander. So, you know, there's some good stuff there in my opinion. But this particular movie is one that it took a little bit of time to get going. They ended up originally wanting Kevin Spacey to play the villain. I mean, this would have been before Usual Suspects. This would have been before Seven. I don't know if this would have put him on the map as far as like being a villain. Although life does kind of imitate art, albeit in this particular case maybe a little bit too soon. You know what I mean? But really, in this case, the movie was produced by Lawrence Gordon, who produced Predator and Die Hard, and he bought the script, I should say, in January of 1990. So why is this movie overlooked in many ways? It's an interesting take on the survive the night mentality, right? Like, these guys are just from the suburbs in the inner city trying to survive. The fact that all the villains are, quite frankly, pretty white, right? Pretty white, you know, in the movie. Even the musician Everlast, you know, like Whitey Ford Sings the Blues, is in the movie as one of Denis Leary's minions, a guy named Rhodes in the film. I mean, like, you've got a movie that probably wouldn't be made the same way today, to be honest with you. It's a film that I think a lot of people would look at as being like probably kind of maybe a little racist, simply because they're depicting the projects in the inner city, and you've got like the poor people of color, and you've got the white oppressor being Denis Leary. He says here, Fallon, by the way, he's described as a drug lord who pursues the four friends after they see him kill a thieving henchman, right? So the idea essentially is just like these guys are just trying to survive. And of course, you know, as we go through the movie, you've got one person that lives, or, you know, most of them live, one person dies. I won't say who, I don't want to spoil it too much. But it's like just a good little movie. It's nothing too crazy. It has Emilio Estevez coming off of Mighty Ducks, Young Guns 2. I mean, Men at Work might have been around, it was definitely around the same time. Stakeout, another Stakeout, all around that same time. Like, this is kind of Emilio Estevez at like the height of his career in many ways. This is Cuba Gooding Jr. before Jerry Maguire, before Show Me the Money, before all of that, right? And then now Cuba Gooding Jr. is also kind of in his own little space, like just weirdness. Stephen Dorff, again, before Deacon Frost and Blade. This is definitely something that has a lot of actors in it, right? Like, one of my favorite actors is in this movie, Peter Green. That's not my favorite actor, but he's one of my favorite kind of character actors. He was the bad guy in The Mask. He was in like Under Siege 2. He was in The Usual Suspects. Like, he's been in so many freaking movies. He was in Pulp Fiction. He was Zed, the sadistic security guard who rode the motorcycle. You know what I mean? Like, he's been in so many movies, and he's in this one as well. And it's just, he plays a good bad guy. And so you've got like a pretty decent cast of people for what is a very simple story, you know, and it is kind of very reminiscent of the early 1990s. It's kind of dark, kind of gritty, not as like terrible as it could be, but it is a thriller that does keep you on the edge of your seat the whole freaking runtime. And it's not like that long, if I recall. I need to watch the movie again, because it's one of those ones that, like, now that I'm older, now that I have kids, now that I've, you know, kind of had more life experiences, I could probably maybe look at this movie and look at it through a different lens. But at the same time, I don't really need to, because it's not one that requires you to really look inward. It's just a fun movie to watch on a Saturday night with your buddies that you just want to go, hey, you want to see a movie with all these actors in it that not a lot of people saw. It had a budget of like $21 million. It only grossed $12 million overall. The critics gave it a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes and an average on 46% on Metacritic. And even the cinema score at the time was a B. But like a lot of movies, Judgment Night found its home on home video, because back then, again, even like now, it's just the idea of you're walking around the video store and you may not have heard of this movie. You may not know anything about this movie, but you look at the box art and the box art's got Emilio Estevez. You know Emilio Estevez, you know Mighty Ducks, you know Young Guns, you know Men at Work, you know all these movies, right? You may not know Cuba Gooding Jr., you may not know Stephen Dorff, but you know Denis Leary if you like comedy. And if you've seen, you know, earlier in the year, Jeremy Piven been around in a few other things, you might know Jeremy Piven. But either way, you sit down and you watch this movie, and it kind of sucks you in from the get-go, right? Because everyone knows what it's like to go to a game. To go to a game with friends, and or go to a boxing match, or go to a sporting event, I should say. And then, you know, maybe not have the night work out the way that you wanted to. In this particular case, it's really crazy. But I know I'm rambling on about it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I like about this movie, why I think it's an overlooked film. It's one of those ones that just came out at the right time in my life to really just sit down and like enjoy what it is. You know, like this is one we rented. This is one my stepdad and I watched. He thought it looked pretty cool. This is around the same time in my life I was watching, you know, like Chuck Norris's The Hitman, which maybe a young child should not be watching. Or I'd go to the video store, or I'd go to the library, and I would rent movies that were probably a little bit above my pay grade in regards to age, but still, it ended up being like, you know, a movie that I remember, and a movie that I've always wanted to share with people, and a movie that I've always enjoyed. And so if you've seen Judgment Night, let me know down in the comments section what you think about it. If it's overrated, underrated, overlooked, underlooked, I want to know your thoughts on it. Also recommend me a movie that you think might be fun to talk about for this overlooked hotel series. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you guys again. Have yourself a great day. My name is Matt Jarbo, and peace out.